You could hear the confidence before you saw him. Slick dress shoes clacking on concrete, a clipboard tucked under one arm like it held the secrets of the universe, and a smug half-smile plastered on his face like he'd just solved construction itself. Ethan. Fresh out of college. Straight from the office. No field dirt on his boots because he didn't have any, just brand new steel toes that still had the store tag tucked inside. He strolled onto the site like he owned it. Didn't shake hands. Didn't make eye contact. Just scanned the workers like he was inspecting merchandise. "You the new engineer?" someone asked from behind a forklift. Ethan didn't even look up. "Project supervisor, technically. I'll be streamlining operations here." The crew exchanged looks. Everyone knew what that meant. Another clipboard cowboy come to tell people who've done this for 20 years how to hold a hammer. And that's when his eyes landed on Reggie. Hard hat low. Gloves on. Tool belt worn in like leather armor. Reggie was tightening a post bracket like he'd done it 1,000 times, which, by the way, he had. But Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Hey you," he called. "You sure that's the right way to do it?" Reggie didn't even look up. Just said calm as ever. "Been doing it this way since before you could drive." Ethan laughed, sharp and loud. "Yeah, well, maybe it's time you learned the modern way." And just like that, everyone on site knew. This wasn't going to be a normal day. By 10 a.m., Ethan had already made himself the most unpopular guy on site, and it wasn't because of anything he built. He walked around with a pencil behind his ear he never used and a checklist he never looked at. Instead, he hovered behind workers like a school hall monitor with a superiority complex. "That's not how we did it in the simulation lab. Are you measuring that in inches or guesses? Wow. That's an old-school method." And every time he said, "Old school," he made eye contact with Reggie. On purpose. The crew stayed quiet. Construction sites don't run on feelings, they run on hours. And nobody wanted to be the first to throw a wrench. But Ethan? He didn't just toe the line. He jackhammered through it. Around lunchtime, he made his way back to Reggie, who was calmly reviewing a blueprint, red pen in hand, marking notes like a man who actually understood the structure he was helping build. Ethan scoffed. "They still let you touch prints? Shouldn't you be digging trenches or something?" Reggie didn't flinch. Didn't get mad. Didn't even look up. Just calmly circled a measurement, folded the paper, and said, "I go where I'm needed." Ethan smirked and walked off like he won something. But what he didn't realize, everyone else heard it. And nobody laughed. Because out here, respect isn't earned with a title, it's earned by knowing when to shut up and listen. It wasn't the first time someone underestimated Reggie. And it probably wouldn't be the last. He'd been in construction longer than Ethan had been alive. Framing houses, pouring foundations, and managing crews before. Project management software was even a thing. But you wouldn't hear him brag about it. Reggie didn't need to prove anything. His work spoke for itself. Level. Clean. Solid. Quietly excellent. So when Ethan strutted around the site, spouting off textbook jargon and throwing shade, Reggie didn't bite. When Ethan corrected him on how to align steel anchors, wrongly, Reggie didn't argue. He just nodded and did it right anyway. When Ethan rolled his eyes during the toolbox talk and muttered something about guys who don't adapt, Reggie just sipped his black coffee and let the silence carry the weight. But make no mistake. He noticed. Every insult. Every disrespectful tone. Every time Ethan glanced at him like he didn't belong. And so did the rest of the crew. Because respect on a site like this? It's quiet. It's earned. And while Ethan was barking orders and trying to prove he was the smartest guy in the room, Reggie was showing everyone exactly how a real leader moves. Without needing to shout. But Ethan? He was about to get loud. And that's where he made his biggest mistake yet. It happened right after lunch. The crew had just gotten back on site, wiping grease off their hands, stretching, getting ready to finish the framing on the south wall. Reggie was double-checking the anchor bolts with his usual method, measured, methodical, and precise. That's when Ethan stormed over, clipboard in hand, voice already raised like a bad boss in a movie. Whoa, 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 what are you doing? Reggie didn't even look up. Checking alignment. Been off by a quarter inch since last pour. Ethan scoffed. Loudly. For effect. That's not the protocol. Did you even read the updated specs I posted this morning? Reggie, calm as ever, replied. Didn't see any specs change on the main plans? Just the spreadsheet in your email thread. I work off the prints. That was all Ethan needed. He turned around, waved his arms, and shouted to the crew. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when we cling to the old way of doing things. You get errors. You get delays. You get guys like Reggie who think experience means they don't have to follow orders. Dead silence. Hammers stopped. Power tools paused. Everyone looked up. Reggie stood slowly, eyes locked on Ethan, expression flat but steady. You calling me a problem, son? Ethan stepped closer, puffed up, eager for the spotlight. I'm saying if you can't take direction, you shouldn't be on a professional job site. A few crew members shifted uncomfortably. One guy muttered, "Damn," under his breath. But Reggie? Still calm. You done? Ethan smirked. Just getting started. And that's when Reggie gave the smallest of nods, like a man who had just flipped a mental switch. Because Ethan thought he was humiliating Reggie. But what he didn't know, Reggie was about to change everything. You could have heard a nail drop. No one moved. No one spoke. The buzzing saws, the clanking rebar, even the guy in the back who always whistled off-key while he worked, silenced. Ethan stood there puffed up like a rooster in a hard hat, convinced he'd just won some kind of power play. Clipboard in one hand. Arrogance in the other. And Reggie? Still as a statue. One hand on his belt, the other resting on the blueprints. The crew looked back and forth between them like they were watching a storm roll in. Everyone knew Reggie didn't deserve that. This wasn't some petty squabble over tools or technique. This was personal. And everyone felt it. There were guys on that site who had worked under Reggie for years, guys he taught to measure, to level, to respect the process. They weren't just workers, they were loyal. But none of them said a word. Not yet. Because the way Reggie stood there, not blinking, not reacting, just breathing slow and easy, it said one thing loud and clear. I got this. And Ethan? Still riding his little wave of authority, still believing he'd put an old man in his place. Still clueless. But the silence wasn't fear. It was respect. For Reggie. And for whatever was about to happen next. Most people, after getting stared down by an entire crew of seasoned workers, might think, maybe I went too far. Not Ethan. Nope. Ethan looked around at the silence and mistook it for obedience. He adjusted his glasses, tapped his pen on the clipboard like a judge at a sentencing, and said, Let me make this clear. If anyone can't follow chain of command, I'll write you up. This isn't a retirement home, it's a job site. A few guys inhaled sharply. One of the younger workers muttered, Yo, that's out of line. But no one moved. And Reggie? Still calm. Still steady. Ethan turned back to him with a sneer, like he wanted the last word. You can either shape up or you can pack up. That was it. Reggie nodded once. Then calmly set down his tape measure, dusted off his hands, and walked away, not storming, not sulking, just steady. He didn't yell. Didn't argue. Didn't give Ethan the satisfaction. He just pulled out his phone. Dialed. One hand in his vest pocket, like he made this call before. The crew watched him go, tension thick in the air. Ethan smirked like he'd just won a prize. That's how you handle resistance, he muttered to no one in particular, walking back toward the trailer. But what Ethan didn't know was that call Reggie just made? That wasn't to HR. That was to someone much, much higher. And the next visitor to the site was coming for him. While Ethan strutted back to the site trailer like a man who just put the crew in their place, Reggie stood by the fence, away from the noise, phone pressed calmly to his ear. No rage. No revenge speech. Just 5 words. Yeah, it's time. He's ready. A pause. Then a chuckle, low, steady, like he'd been waiting for this moment to unfold naturally. Yeah. Front row seat would be nice. He hung up. Didn't say a word to the crew. Didn't need to. Just walked over to the rebar pile, grabbed his gloves, and started tying off the steel like nothing had happened. But everyone watching knew something had. Reggie wasn't just letting it slide. He was setting the stage. And the silence that followed? It wasn't awkward anymore. It was the quiet before impact. Because the man on the other end of that call? He didn't just have authority. He had a title. And that call just moved Ethan's name from clipboard to clipboard. The next morning, the site was buzzing, nail guns, forklifts, saws cutting through the humid air. Ethan was back on his usual patrol, chest puffed, barking suggestions no one asked for. But around 9:13 a.m., everything slowed to a crawl. A sleek black SUV rolled through the gravel lot, shiny, tinted, and clearly not here for drywall measurements. The crew paused. Even Tank, the site dog, stopped chewing his 2x4 long enough to tilt his head. Out stepped a man in a crisp charcoal suit. No hard hat. No clipboard. Just purpose. The kind of calm that makes people move out of your way without being told. He glanced around the site, then locked eyes with Reggie, who, for the first time in days, actually smiled. "Morning, boss," Reggie said, wiping his hands and walking over. The crew blinked. "Boss?" Ethan emerged from the trailer, sunglasses on, holding a coffee he didn't earn. "Can I help you?" he called out, walking over like he was about to pitch a new plan. The man didn't look at him. He shook Reggie's hand instead. "How's the site running?" Reggie nodded. "A little messy. I figured it was time you came and saw it yourself." That's when Ethan finally put it together. His eyes flicked between them, first confused, then cautious. "Wait, I'm sorry, who are you?" The man turned to him, finally speaking directly. "I'm Leonard Hayes, Regional Director. I oversee all sites within a 300-mile radius." Ethan blinked like someone had hit pause on his thoughts. "Oh, Mr. Hayes, I didn't realize." Hayes cut him off with a small, polite smile that somehow felt like a warning. "No, you didn't. But that's the problem." The crew stood still, jaws tight, hearts beating in sync with the shift in air pressure. Because everyone knew. Whatever was about to happen, it was going to happen publicly. Ethan stood frozen, trying to smile like everything was fine, like this wasn't the exact scenario they warned him about in corporate training. But Reggie? He was as calm as ever, wiping his hands on a rag like he had all the time in the world. Leonard Hayes turned toward the crew and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Some of you may not know this, but Mr. Reggie Thomas isn't just a crew hand. He's been with this company longer than most of our engineers have been alive. He's a senior site advisor, personally assigned to evaluate team performance on the ground." You could almost hear Ethan's soul deflate. Hayes wasn't done. "He's trusted to identify which sites are running efficiently, and which ones are being mishandled." Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but Hayes raised a hand, just once, and it shut him down like a switch had been flipped. "And based on the behavior that's been documented, and witnessed personally by my office." He paused, glanced at Reggie, then back at Ethan. "We have a serious leadership issue." The crew shifted, eyes wide, heads turning like spectators watching a courtroom drama unfold live. Reggie didn't say a word. He didn't have to. For days he let Ethan run his mouth. Let him bark orders, throw insults, humiliate him in front of the team. And now? Now the guy who thought he was the boss was standing face to face with the real one. And his clipboard wasn't going to save him. Hayes stepped forward, slow and deliberate, the kind of calm that makes grown men sweat. "Ethan." Ethan stood at attention like a schoolkid caught with a cheat sheet. "Yes, sir. You arrived on this site less than a week ago." In that time, you've created a hostile work environment, ignored documented procedures, altered workflow without approvals, and publicly disrespected one of this company's most senior field advisors. Ethan blinked fast. Sir, I thought I was in charge? Hayes cut him off. No. You were here to learn. To observe. You were assigned as junior project support. But instead, you tried to play boss, and failed the first test of leadership. Ethan's face went pale. The crew stood in silence. Nobody dared move. Not even Tank. Hayes turned slightly and gestured to Reggie. This man has built more projects than your resume has bullet points. And instead of listening to him, you tried to humiliate him. On camera. In public. That part hit hard. Ethan's eyes darted around. Camera? Reggie, still silent, calmly reached into his vest pocket, pulled out a small body cam, and clicked it off. Site safety, son, he said quietly. We always record. Ethan's jaw dropped. He had humiliated himself, on tape. Hayes nodded. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. That'll be all. Then he turned back to Ethan. Pack up your things. You're done here. Wait, what? Ethan gasped. Hayes didn't raise his voice. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security will collect your badge and escort you off-site. Your access to all company platforms is revoked. A quiet gasp rippled through the crew. No cheering. No gloating. Just justice. Ethan opened his mouth again, then stopped. There was nothing left to say. The man who thought he was the authority had just been fired by the man he tried to shame. In front of everyone. Ethan stood there, clipboard dangling, sunglasses askew, mouth halfway open like he still couldn't believe what just happened. The silence wasn't cruel. It was final. Reggie didn't gloat. Didn't smirk. Didn't say, I told you so. He just stepped aside as the security officer arrived, nodded once, and let the moment pass like he'd seen it coming a mile away. Sir, we'll need your badge and site tablet, the guard said. Ethan handed them over slowly, hands shaking slightly. You're making a mistake, he muttered to Hayes, clinging to whatever scraps of ego he had left. Hayes didn't flinch. No. You did. With that, Ethan turned and walked toward the parking lot, kicking up little puffs of gravel with every step. Not a single person called after him. Not a single farewell. Just quiet boots on concrete, and a door that closed behind him with a finality you could feel. Reggie exhaled once, deep and slow. Then he picked up his wrench, turned to the crew and said, Let's get back to work. And just like that, the spell broke. Tools buzzed. Ladders moved. The crew shook off the tension like dust off denim. But one thing had changed, and everybody knew it. Because after that moment, Reggie wasn't just the guy who'd been wrong. He was the man who'd earned the whole crew's respect without raising his voice once. The crew gathered near the trailer as the dust from Ethan's exit settled, not because anyone told them to, but because they wanted to. One by one, they walked over to Reggie. A nod. A pat on the back. A quiet, appreciate you, man. Even the new guy, barely a month in, said, Didn't know who you were before, but I'll follow your lead any day. Reggie gave a tired smile. Not smug. Not showy. Just the look of a man who's carried his weight, and others, for decades, and finally got to lay one burden down. Then, as he walked back toward the half-finished framing, someone called out, You got anything to say, Reg? He paused. Turned around slowly. Looked out across the crew. His voice was calm. Quiet. But somehow carried more than any yell ever could. Don't ever let a title fool you. A man's not a leader because of what's on his badge. He's a leader by how he treats the people beneath him, especially when he thinks no one's watching. He held up his wrench, tossed it once in the air, caught it, and added, Out here, we don't build walls. We build trust. One beam at a time. And with that, he turned back to the job. No mic drop. No spotlight. Just the steady rhythm of a man who lets his work do the talking. And this time? Everyone was listening,